Metanomics is brought to you by Remedy Communications and Dusan Writers Metaverse.
Okay, and now virtual worlds play potentially an obvious role in virtual organizations by giving people a rich way to communicate across distances. And a lot of us, I think, do look at virtual worlds as being primarily a place to eliminate geographical constraints. But your own interest in virtual worlds for the virtual organization came through their use platforms. So what role do you see gaming platforms having in virtual organizations in the future of work?
Yeah, this work came out of some of the work done at IBM in the Global Innovation Outlook, and the big question was, what's the future of enterprise? And the old saw, the future is already here, just not evenly distributed, is applied here, where we said, can we find a place where we think the future of work already exists? And the characteristics there was that it was open, it was global, it was virtual, it was volunteer workforce, and it was knowledge-based. And as we looked around to try and find some kind of environment with that signature, massively multiplayer online role-playing games emerged. And what we started to do was observe how leadership and decision-making and innovation occurred within these massively multiplayer online role-playing games in an environment that is essentially polar opposite of command and control, but still things get done. So that's kind of how I ended up really becoming enamored with this whole environment.
And about when was that?
About 3.5 years ago is when we started looking at MMOs. And then once we got through looking at MMOs and their applications to leadership, the Second Life awareness bubble kind of came into light, and IBM's virtual universe community was established. So it was a natural extension then to start looking at the virtual social worlds rather than the MMO RPGs.
Moving on, Tony, everywhere I turn this month, I see someone else foretelling the death of the traditional company. For example, Margaret Regan, who was at your conference in Washington, D.C. last month, wrote for CNN this month and says, and this is a quote, "By 2042, there will be no workplace as we know it. Goodbye wired desks. Hello wireless personal wearable networks." And she goes on to say, another quote, "Work will feel like a Hollywood movie in which managers, directors, and team members come together around a specific project, collaborate intensely, and then disband." So she clearly sees virtual companies and virtual teams as the way of the future. Would you sign on to that?
Yeah, I think to a certain extent, looking out to 2042 is a long, long way. And one thing we know about technology is it's iterative and it evolves on top of itself, so it tends to go at an exponential rate. The work we did with the Global Innovation Outlook, Future of Enterprise, we went all around the world and interviewed visionaries like Margaret as to where things were going. And one of the most provocative quotes that came out of that, not necessarily saying it's where things are going, but it made us think, was the future could consist of 1 billion one-person enterprises, people who move frequently from project to project as their skills and focus shift. Now, underlying that, Rob, is Coase's law. One of I'm getting into your territory here, so I better watch out. But the notion that firms will grow or shrink to the size of a transaction cost. So if the transaction cost inside the firm is lower, then we'll do it. At one point in time, Ford imported sand, to make windshields. They don't do that anymore. They can find someone else who can make the windshields. They can have FedEx ship it, and they can manage the whole thing through an IP network. So if we buy that concept that there's going to be shrinkage around core competence, and then you can create ecosystems to wrap capability around endeavor, it does seem that moving from hierarchy to matrix to ecosystem does seem like a logical progression. How that unfolds within the enterprise, however, I don't think it's going to be a, flip the switch and you have more of a network ecosystem type of model as opposed to a matrix. But I do see it moving in that direction.